Welcome on this lovely spring morning. My name is Mike McGuire, as most of you in this room know. I'm a professor of communications here at Moraine Valley, and today we're here with students from my Composition 2 course. Composition 2 is a course that introduces students to college-level research and writing. College-level research writing. To some, they may sound like a rather dull enterprise, rife with long hours, isolated in the bowels of a college library, sitting glossy-eyed, basked in the glow of a computer screen, and spiraling aimlessly down the rabbit hole of an academic database. Well, while students have spent their fair share of time in such precarious positions this semester, most did far more than that. Together, we've made this semester not just an exercise in academic thought, but one of action. This semester, we've used a method known as critical service learning. Critical service learning is a pedagogical approach that connects an enhanced academic experience, civic skills, and service with the community in order to better understand the social issues that affect us all, and at the same time work to create positive change. Rather than limit ourselves to the typical confines of classroom, library, and the digital web, students this semester have collectively partnered with 23 separate community nonprofit agencies as a way of conducting fieldwork research alongside experts in fields ranging from food insecurity, disability rights, early childhood education, elder care, animal welfare, immigrant rights, homelessness and housing, cancer support, ecological restoration, and extreme global poverty. I don't think we left anything off that long list. Students combined this fieldwork research with their own personal writing and other intensive research efforts. Ultimately, they worked to raise their own levels of awareness and critical consciousness on these issues so that today they could share with you their understanding and call you to action. Please listen carefully to these speakers today, with an open mind and an open heart, as they weave together their stories of self, a story of us, and most significantly, the story of now.
The story of us is asking the question, what is my... The story of self is asking the question, what is my purpose? I believe that my purpose for joining the ESL program for my service learning project was to understand how difficult learning the English language it really is. I feel that now that I was able to understand and learn from the experience, now I have a better understanding of how difficult learning the English language really is. We all may think that we don't have a purpose in life. However, some of us do believe that we do have a purpose. By joining the ESL program for my service learning project, I was able to help future citizens of the United States learn the English language, as well as help them adapt to the American culture. I feel that if we continue to think of ways to help benefit ESL and help benefit ourselves, we will all feel like we have benefited each other. You may be asking the question, how can we benefit society? The answer is that we must continue to think of ways that can help benefit ESL, such as having a charity web page through a charity website, such as GoFundMe, or having monthly ESL events. Because, again, I feel that if we do those things, we will all feel a sense that we were able to help people of different ethnicities and different cultures. So, my call to action for all is that if we continue to do these things and continue to fund programs such as ESL, we will all understand what our purpose in life is from a service learning standpoint, from a community standpoint. That's
All right. Can you imagine our world without forests? I've grown up camping, and our vacations were Minnesota, Wisconsin. So I've always seen trees everywhere, but now there's an issue with forests being cut down and all the trees going away. When we were camping, you would notice all the trees everywhere, and then all of a sudden we came back the next year and half the trees were gone. That was because they cleared it for camp spaces, which that's fine, but I mean, there was animals that lived in there, and that's kind of what struck me the most. So, I chose my project to be the Payless Restoration Project, and we went out and we cut down Asian honeysuckles, which are a non-native invasive species. And well, I learned a lot there about beyond just what the nature does in the trees and everything, but more about the ecosystem and how cutting down these trees really hurts the ecosystem. So, sorry. I learned, I also studied more about the logging and drilling for gas and oil, and that's how most of the trees have gotten cut down all over the world. And in Canada, 40% of the forests were taken away just from logging. That's hundreds of birds that lost their home and a lot of wildlife. 8,000 years ago, it was said that trees cover 2/5 of our land. And since humans have grown and everything, we've taken up majority of that. So eventually we could end up with no forests, and that's what people are worried about, which that's what could really hurt the ecosystem because it releases the carbon dioxide. So I think that we could make a change and a difference by being part of the Payless Restoration Project. You can volunteer there, and you can go out and clear up trash or just volunteer cutting down the trees. All these forests are in our backyard, so it's pretty easy for us to help out. There's also the national plan of the National Forest Service, and they're the ones that kind of make the biggest difference on the forests and changing the ways of the logging and the drilling and everything like that. And if everyone became aware, I think that we could make a difference and save the forests. Thank you.
So many people, including all of you, I'm sure, have strong opinions on all of many social justice topics floating around in the news today. But how many of you actually know about the issue of food insecurity in America? So personally, I used to be just like you. I didn't know much about food insecurity, and to be honest, I never really gave it much thought at all. Part of the reason for this is that no one I know and none of the people I love have ever had to deal with food insecurity. So I say I used to be because I now know a lot more about it, and I have kind of strong opinions on it after doing my service learning project. So I connected on a deep and personal level to the issue when I spoke with one of the regular volunteers at the Greater Chicago Food Depository, who happens to be a middle school teacher in Chicago, and she told me a story of how, while organizing a food drive for families in need, her young students brought in food that they themselves had received from the Greater Chicago Food Depository to donate to other families who needed it. And this is the moment when the topic of food insecurity really kind of hit home for me, because the fact that there are families giving up what little they have to help those just like them kind of forced me to reflect on my life and my actions thus far. So since I had made a personal connection to my life through her experiences, the gears in my head started to churn, and I started to ask myself questions like, how is it that families that are less food insecure food secure than mine are doing more for their communities, which led me to think about how I would act if the roles were reversed and if I was the one who was food insecure. These were some scary thoughts for me to think about because I wasn't quite sure if my family would have done the same things as those families in the middle school did. So they say that the only true act of service is doing something for someone who can never repay you and doing it for a selfless reason. But I bet I'm not the only one in this room turning this over in my head, that the question of whether each and every one of us would give what we have, would give what we ourselves were given to help those in need, as the families that I explained earlier have. To really contemplate this idea, one must imagine themselves in the shoes of a person who is food insecure. We must imagine the feeling of constantly being hungry but having to focus on our jobs in our schools all day long. We must imagine ourselves not having eaten for the past 2 days and not knowing where our next meal would come from. It's not easy for us to imagine going about life this way because none of us have actually ever experienced it. Considering that many of us cannot begin to imagine these feelings, one question that comes to mind is that, is it justifiable for us to let the families who are food insecure give away their food to help others in their shoes, while most of us who are privileged and food-wise, we sit around and basically do nothing about it? So there are an estimated 17 million households in America that struggle with food insecurity. And during my 3 hours at the Greater Chicago Food Depository, my group managed to pack enough food to feed around 26,000 American families. So you may find yourself thinking that there must have been a really large group of people doing this to make so many meals in such a small amount of time. And a significant amount of people tend to believe that one person cannot make much of a difference. And for real change to happen, there must be a movement with many people. So I'm here to tell you that's not the case. Every volunteer, every child, and every person giving their time and effort at the Greater Chicago Food Depository makes a huge difference on the lives of so many families who are extremely similar to us. And if each of us here today gave 3 hours of our time just for one night to help package food at this organization that does so many great things for our communities, could you imagine how many families all of us could help feed? Giving away the extra cans and pastas and soups that we have stacked in our kitchens to our local food pantries is just as good of a deed as volunteering at the Greater Chicago Food Depository. Lending 3 hours of our time or donating food we won't eat is a small price to pay to personally be able to help better the lives of many American families struggling with food insecurity. But for this reason, it's actually not a price to pay at all.
Hello, everybody. My name's Sabrina. I'll be talking about what I did for my service learning and why it meant so much to me. So growing up, I'm sure some of you guys know I didn't always have it so good. My parents, got a divorce and we moved all the way back from New Mexico. Thankfully, we did have a family that really had our back and gave us a spot to sleep at night and fed us, and I always knew that I wouldn't go to sleep hungry. This is a lot to do with why I picked to feed the homeless with the night ministry. I feel like I could really help I could really give back to the people who've helped me through other people. So when I went there, it was quite an experience. We fed the homeless. We set up camp at the corner of Pilsen, and we just started distributing some sandwiches, some soup. We had chips. We had a whole bunch there. And it really hit me doing the service learning project when we went into the little RV bus that we entered, and where they helped people, get checkups for HIV checkups or anything that they felt they had issues with. And I really learned a lot through that because they kind of explained to us how hospitals don't really like to take in the less fortunate because of insurance. And this is what really made me kind of happy that I helped feed the homeless, because around 8th grade I tore my ACL and nobody wanted to take me in. I didn't have the right insurance for them to take me in. But it was this one doctor, Dr. Kerchak, that really, he took me in even though I didn't have the insurance to cover. And that's when I really could relate myself to the less fortunate. So giving back to my community, to the community, was a nice gesture on this class that I'm really grateful that I was able to do. I learned that there's a lot of things that we could do to help the homeless. one, just give an opening ear. If you have time walking downtown, you see somebody, don't be afraid to tell them hello or good morning or good afternoon or how was your day. Don't be afraid to ask them, because sometimes people do just need someone to be listened to. If you do have that extra dollar to spare, my thing is give them that dollar, but don't judge them after you give them that dollar, or don't already assume that they're going to buy their next beer. Just give it to them with an opening heart. And then my last thing I think that we could do is we could definitely help with organizations like the Night Ministry. There's a whole bunch of organizations in Chicago that if you give a little bit of your time, it goes a long way. That's it.
Hello, everyone. My parents came from Poland to America without nothing. They had no friends, no jobs, and they didn't even know the language. At a young age, we were considered poor. We were all cramped up in a small apartment without no television, 2 mattresses, and a small bathroom. We lived in a pretty bad neighborhood. I can remember at night, I could hear fireworks. That's what my mom would always say. But I don't think people were shooting fireworks off in the middle of winter. I remember as a kid, my mother would walk me to school every day in the snow, rain, and in the cold. It was 8 blocks from where I lived. Some days my mother couldn't afford my lunch, and I could remember being at school when it was pizza day and I would just watch everyone eat pizza and I was miserable. Although it was hard to make friends at school, I barely knew the language. Everyone had nice clothes, new shoes, Game Boys. I wore a uniform for 2 years and wore the same shoes for a year. All those cold nights, cold days, walking back to school, it gives me a lot to think about. I can't imagine what would it be like to be homeless in Chicago, let alone being hungry in the cold and trying to sleep on an empty stomach in the cold. As I look back at my childhood, I didn't have it bad compared to others. I had shelter, clothes, I had food every day. People are stuck outside like animals, worrying about when the next time they could eat. In this day and age, homelessness should not exist. We have the resources, technology, and the manpower to end it. We have great organizations in Chicago to help the misfortunate. One of those great organizations is the Night Ministry. The Night Ministry is a nonprofit organization where they have a motorhome converted into a treating facility where they could help people with HIV tests, treat them, and then they also could help them get shelter. I volunteered to pass out food for the Night Ministry one night, and I thought no one would come because it was so cold. But to my surprise, a lot of people came, and we passed out 100 sandwiches and a lot of bowls of soup. At that moment, all I could see is laughter, smiles, and no one was sad or angry. Everyone was at peace. In Chicago alone, we have 125,000 Chicagoans that are homeless. Out of that 125,000, there's 20,000 homeless students who are identified by the Chicago Public Schools. We should not look down on the homeless like they are inferior because at the end, we are all humans. We should not. Now, do I think we can help a lot of these homeless people out? Yes, I do. How, you ask? Well, I don't believe one person can end homelessness in Chicago. Well, maybe Donald Trump can, but I don't think he will be coming to Chicago for a while. But besides the point, one step that barely takes effort is when you go out to your diner or your favorite restaurant, just take your food with you, and if you see someone that's homeless, you just simply give it to them if they're hungry. Another way is to come up and volunteer to your community. Trust me, it's not bad as you think. You'll meet wonderful people and have a great experience, and also you have that sense of accomplishing something good in your life. If you don't have time, simply just go to your grocery store, buy some supplies, and go to a food drive, especially during the summertime where food rations are low because of the major holidays. You can also donate money to a nonprofit organizations. There's many nonprofit organizations that can really benefit the homeless. Lastly, and most importantly, topic that I want to discuss is homeless kids. We should not be turning our backs on the kids of tomorrow. Did you know if you are 18 years old and in a foster home, the state sees you as an independent adult and who can take care of yourself and will throw you out of their care? Well, I remember when I was 18, I couldn't take care of myself. And we should what we should do is we should write a petition to one of our Illinois representatives named Mike Quilligi. He is a representative of Chicago, to ask either to have the foster age move up or create a safety net for these kids where kids could learn how to live an independent life. Because at the end of the day, they will have no other place to go but the streets and become another statistic in the ever-growing number of homeless in Chicago. Thank you for your time.
So I live in Palos Park, where nothing really happens. You don't have to worry about your car being stolen or coming home and seeing all your furniture broken or not there. I have a supportive family who would do anything for me, and if I need help, they would, no questions, fix it for me. When I was 2, my dad left, and my mom raised me all by herself. He left us with a lot of debt, and my mom made less than she owed. After a couple years, we went out of it, but her strength and courage shaped me into the person I am today. I'm very fortunate for my family in my life. They care about me, and they would do anything for me. And if I didn't have them, I don't know what I'd do. Some people don't have that family backbone. They usually get kicked out, or they don't have anywhere to go, and they end up fending for themselves or in homeless shelters. I wait for the day that no kid is cold and hungry, and no one in the streets when wondering where their next meal is, or when they will be warm again. My duty is to help as many people as I can. I've donated so much time to charities like Little Company of Mary Hospital, where I talk to those who don't have that family support, and I listen to their stories and look through their eyes as to what their life is like. In March, a group of us went to night ministry. We served food in the Pilsen area and who didn't have food for the week. We talked one-on-one with people who struggled and were homeless, and to see what their life is like. We also went to the Lakeview area where night ministry is held, which is called the Crib, and we walked around and learned about how they got in their situation and what life is like with them. And we also got to think about what life is like and how grateful we were. More than 34,000 a year who volunteer to meet Chicago's needs, and 25,000 unaccompanied youth live in Illinois, so it's hard to meet everyone's demands. So I challenge everyone here. Look at your life. Think about what you have, and imagine if all of that went away, if you only had the clothes on your back. Think about all the people out there who don't have much and struggle to survive in the winter and in the summer if they don't have clothes. So my challenge is, when you walk down the busy streets and see homeless trying to turn their life around, don't turn the other cheek like they don't exist. Smile and give them the time of day and maybe a few dollars to eat. They are people too, and everyone deserves to be appreciated and treated with respect.
I've always had a love for animals. In my household, we have 2 dogs, a bunny, and a bearded dragon. I'd like to specifically talk about my dog, Pebbles, who we adopted from Animal Welfare League in Chicago Ridge on February 2nd, 2014. Some people would say we took a chance with her because when you go to adopt a dog at Animal Welfare League, they let you play with the dog in a room, and she showed no interest in us. She showed no personality at all, but we still adopted her. And it was the best decision of our life. But she did have a lot of health problems within the first month that we had her. We took her to the vet at least once, twice a week to the clinic at Animal Welfare League. And I was grateful for her because they helped us a lot. Animal Welfare League, they told us that we didn't have to pay a lot of the time. So I think that's why I chose it as my service learning project, because I felt like I was repaying them back for what they did with my dog. And what I did at the shelter was clean cages, and I got to give the dogs treats and play with them in the rooms. And a lot of the dogs there were given up due to them growing too big, or the family couldn't take care of them anymore. And there was specifically a dog that I cleaned his cage for, and his name was Chase. He was very great dog. He didn't jump up on me like the other dogs did. And when I cleaned his cage, put him in the room, and walked away, came back, I hear the door opening. I was like, oh, maybe I didn't close it all the way. And I close it,
look in the window and he's standing on the door handle. And I'm like, shoo, get off the door handle, please. And I walk away. He gets back up on it, opens the door. So I was like, okay. I go in the room with him, and very sweet boy. He knew a lot of tricks, and he knew how to sit, how to give paw, how to give kisses. And I don't know why anyone would want to give up such a great dog. And what I ask of everyone is, if you're ever looking for a dog or any type of animal, to look at your nearest animal shelter, because lots of animals are euthanized each day, and everyone deserves a second chance. And also, if you are looking for an animal, don't just look at young animals, because the older ones do give the same amount of love as a young one would. And if you're not looking for an animal, I would say donate or go volunteer at your nearest animal shelter.
Hello. Ecological restoration might not seem important right now or urgent, but eventually it's going to reach us. And the environment is really important, because as cities expand, people from downtown might want to come here near Moraine Valley and experience the wilderness that exists here. So the forest preserves will become more of a value over time. Personally, I go on trails all the time, ride my bike, camp outside, and I see trash all the time, plastic bags up in trees, just cans and everything near trails. It doesn't matter which part of a trail I go to, I still see trash there. And that's a real problem, because people there still work, and that's their workplace, and they see trash everywhere. It's like almost the same thing as if I walked into a store and just threw a bag of chips down and not picked it up. It's like the same thing for the forest preserve people that have to deal with the trash. And another problem that exists in forest preserves are invasive plant species, and they can damage our food web from the bottom up, so food can become scarce for us, and the health of forest preserves can be damaged from invasive plant species. So you can contribute by going to the Payless Restoration Project website and volunteering there. I actually did my service learning there by signing up. It's really easy. It's real simple. And other things you can do is raise awareness in your newspaper, just post signs and everything. You can also make sure you don't litter, pick up garbage that other people throw down, and do not write on the picnic tables, which I've used before, and they're really convenient, really good things that exist in forest preserves. And the last thing, we have to deal with these problems before they reach us and eventually damage our communities and society. So hopefully I made a difference by saying these things. Thank you for your time.
I'm Janae, and I'm going to talk about my experience of growing up with my grandmother. I was adopted by my grandmother when she was 50 years old. I was just 3 days old. She previously raised 4 children before me. I was her 5th. She raised 3 boys and 1 girl. So being with my grandmother was a really impact, and it taught me another perspective of the elderly entirely. She had, other than raising her children, the 5 she's raised, she would work to support them. She recently retired from an inland steel container company for 25 long years. It's sort of like a warehouse where you load and unload gasoline pails and heavy metals and other things like that on and off the line and run it through the building. It's very labor intensive and a physical demanding job, especially for 25 years to work there. It's very intensive on your body, and living with my grandmother, it was very fun. We were very close. We would do everything together. You wouldn't see me without her or her without me. Very close, very tight. And
other than raising children and working, she would party. So she would go downtown. She would always tell me stories about her favorite club being Jimmy Wong and going dancing with her friends and enjoying life as anyone would. She was very independent. As I said, she raised 5 children on her own, so very independent. But as I got older, I saw her health diminish, typically her physical abilities. From working on the job, her hands was numb. She had severe carpal tunnel. She had very bad back problems, which took the strength out of her legs, because your main source of your strength comes from your back. So, of course, if your back is hurt, none of the body or limbs will work normally. So kind of that independent state that my mother was in, it kind of got ripped apart from her. So her mobility changed. She never went out, no grocery shopping, regular things that people do. And she was really used to going out and partying and going to Jimmy Wong and enjoying her life. So she no longer had that part of her. And I could see that her personality started to fade. And I knew that I had to do something because, I'm thinking, this is not my mom. She doesn't stay in the house all the time and things like that. So I know I had to work around my busy schedule. I work full-time and I attend school full-time. So it was a kind of a rough patch in our lives. We both had to adapt to learning how to spend quality time with each other. And that was the most important thing. As I started spending quality time with my grandmother, I could see the personality that was fading since she's not going out. I could see it come back. She smiled more. She was not as bitter and, angry and in a bad mood. And seeing this, it made me, oh, wow, this happens to everyone. Even though we don't see it, we kind of take a hands-off approach when people get older and let them kind of diminish and just let them stay home. And that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to kind of spend quality time with them and let them know that, they matter. Just because growing old, it doesn't, life still goes on. They feel the same emotions we feel. They go through the same things we do. It happens to all of us. We all have grandparents. And even if we don't, we never met them, we have neighbors as well. We can help them. So my challenge for you would be to spend time with any elders and it doesn't have to be an hour, 3 hours. You can just say hello, genuinely have a conversation with them. If you don't have any neighbors or grandparents, you see older people walking out of the store all the time. Maybe hold the door. Let them know that you care. And growing old is something that everyone has to do. Thank you.
Hello. Growing up, I used to go to the forest preserves almost every weekend with my dad and grandpa. Every time we'd walk through the trails, my grandpa would always tell me to pick up trash if I saw it, or he would do it for me. The more and more we began to go, I saw the forest slowly diminish and become smaller. My grandpa always told me that this would happen because of just how people lived, which was terrible. He taught me easy ways to help by planting native plants within the areas, cleaning, and staying on the trails so you wouldn't harm the wildlife growing. Recently, I actually had the opportunity to volunteer with the Ecological Restoration group. And what we did was we cleaned a grassland area and prepared it for a controlled burn, which actually allowed it like a reset. It made the soil richer, which allows it to grow better and prosper. And then 2 weeks later, we went back and we planted a lot of native seeds that we had gathered before throughout the area. So then we'll actually increase the size of the grasslands that were there before the controlled burn. And I met a lot of interesting people there because they all taught me the important things about it and how this small thing can help for many, many years, and how it'll make the air fresher, better oxygen, and even just the smells of a nice forest all automatically makes people feel better. Many things people don't realize is that forests are a very important thing for us because they clean our air, and the trees and plants within it inhale the carbon dioxide that we give off, and they give off new oxygen for us, which we need to breathe. If we don't make a change now, we'll have less air, and it'll be more toxic from all the fumes from cars and factories. I ask you a few simple things you can all do to help preserve these areas. Walking through them, if you see garbage, trash, just pick it up, throw it out yourself. It's not a big deal. It's something easy to do. You could also continue to put in more native plants in the areas, which will help everything grow, which will also give off other seeds to keep growing them. Also, stay on the trails, because if you go off the trails, you could trample on some plants, which will kill them or make them smaller. And also, I leave you with this. Imagine a world with no forests, nothing green, you don't smell all the nature. Just imagine how dull it would be, and that's what will happen if we don't make a change with our forests soon. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. For those of you who don't know, my name is Michael Pickering. Over the course of this semester, I've pretty much geared my research and all of my papers around one thing, and that one thing is animal welfare. Now, by a show of hands, out of curiosity, how many of you have or have had pets? Very good, decent amount, if not everybody. So I'm sure that I really don't have to explain to you that animals and pets, to be specific, are pretty much members of the family, full-fledged. We know this because of how much joy they give us when we're with them, holding them, loving them. Simple things is feeding them, taking them out for walks if you have dogs. And of course, when we lose them, you feel the emptiness in your home. And for a while, truthfully, it doesn't feel like home. Unfortunately, that's part of it's an aspect of life that we all have to accept and learn to go on afterwards, but it does happen. There are thousands upon thousands of animals across this country and truthfully every country that suffer, that don't have homes, that don't have families to love them, that are neglected, abused, and unwanted. The Animal Welfare League in Chicago Ridge is one facility that really tries to make a difference with this. Any year, about 20,000 animals go through the Animal Welfare League. Now, that's not at one time, but over the span of a year, they take in and adopt and take care of around 20,000. They do all this as a nonprofit organization. They're completely structured around volunteers and people who genuinely care about the well-being of animals, as I'm sure a lot of us do. Now, during my time at the Animal Welfare League, I did what many people would expect to do. You clean cages, you feed the animals, you take them out for walks. If you own pets, pretty much the same thing. The only difference is these animals don't know what it's like to have a home in many cases. A lot of them have been in cages all their lives. They've known no compassion, they've known no loving embrace of a young boy or girl. I had a particularly moving experience with a dog named Buddy. Now, during my time at the Animal Welfare League, I chose to work with dogs, and specifically larger breed dogs, just because I'm a bigger man myself, so I'm not really intimidated, and I've had large dogs before. Buddy was a golden retriever. Very kind of golden, sleek fur, kind of an aged face. He was an older dog. He wasn't a puppy or he wasn't young. He'd been there for a while. And walking up to the cage of Buddy for the first time, he was curled in a ball, kind of not paying attention to anything else. Of course, in the background, you hear other dogs barking. They get excited when people walk in the back where the cages are. And Buddy just didn't seem to really react to anything. But the moment that I reached for the latch on the cage, he jumped right up. And he looked at me, just as many dogs do, with pure excitement. And his tail must have been wagging faster than a speeding train. Buddy was just this energetic dog who was just yearning to be loved and yearning to show the world what he could bring to it. And it's sad. It's a sad thought to think that there are animals like Buddy who unfortunately never get adopted, and in most cases, and in some cases, they get euthanized, which is an unfortunate aspect. But the Animal Welfare League is a facility who does its best to make sure that that doesn't happen. My call to action is to, first of all, volunteer. It's what the Animal Welfare League is completely dependent on. Now, a lot of you may be thinking, well, I don't have the time, especially now that all of us are college students. Truthfully, time is something that is very scarce. But I'm someone who is a full-time student here at Moraine Valley, and I work 2 part-time jobs on top of maintaining a relationship and other things. And at first, I was thinking the same thing. Now, I'm someone who's passionate about animals, but I was thinking about the reality of it, and I thought I would be very hard-pressed for time to do this. Thankfully, they offer a lot of hours. They offer a lot of opportunities to volunteer, and truthfully, they will help you with any schedules that you have. Now, for those of you who still aren't convinced that you can volunteer, there's always adoption. There's tons of animals, not just dogs and cats, birds, hamsters, a huge range of animals to adopt and love. And the last thing is to donate. And donating doesn't mean money. It doesn't mean you have to buy food or anything like that. Something as simple as newspapers are detrimental. I mean, you can just take whatever newspapers you have at your house, stack them up, bring them over. Takes maybe 5 minutes, depending on where you live, I suppose. My point is that animals are, in a lot of cases like humans, they need love, and they want to show love to other people. So, with that in mind, that's it.
Thank you for sticking around for me. I appreciate it, even though I was late to miss a couple of your speeches. But growing up, my family and I like to spend our time outdoors primarily. We'd go on camping trips, fishing trips, but our favorite activity really was to go hiking, most commonly here in these forest preserves of Cook County. The theme that I would notice growing up, even to now, to today, is I would find garbage everywhere. Didn't matter how far I went off trailing, how deep into the woods I would go, you could always find plastic, you could find bottles. One time I even found a hypodermic needle. Luckily it was capped, and I was able to put it in a bag and take it out. One time, this is kind of strange and kind of creepy. You know, we did some night hiking out in Oregon, Illinois. We came across an abandoned campsite, and it was just gross negligence on the people who left it there. I mean, they actually brought garbage bags, put all their garbage in that garbage bag, but left it there. They left their tent, left the fire pit, which is actually illegal in Illinois to do open fires unless you're certified to do so. But I'm just glad I didn't find any dead bodies in there, because that would have creeped me out. Now, you're probably wondering why it's important to clean up garbage from these forest preserves, from these trails. Like many of you have pets. If you take them for a walk, you get distracted, they find something, they'll eat it up, they can choke on it, it can make them very sick. Now, this happens to all the animals out in the forest that we're trying to preserve with these forest preserves. They suffer these injuries that they shouldn't have to have, like stepping on glass, eating plastic. And what I'm asking you to do is, if you go out for a hike, just keep a plastic bag on you, something simple as that. Might not seem like much, but you'll see within a mile you can fill up that bag and more. Actually, on my way out from class last week, for every step that I took to my car, I saw a piece of garbage following me. So I wish I had a plastic bag with me to pick that up, so I guess I'll follow my own advice. Another thing you could do is go onto the IDFP website, which is the Illinois Department of Forest Preserves, where you could sign up to be a volunteer for the forest preserves of Cook County to pick up trash. Thank you.
This is on homelessness, and this got addressed to me about last year. I was actually I have a forest preserve by my house, and there was a younger lady there, and sorry, I'm so sick, but she was telling me about how she lives in her car with her daughter because she was a waitress, and she got kicked out of her house actually because she wasn't be able to afford the rent. And she was telling me that, and when she told me that story, it broke my heart. It was horrible that she had to live out on the streets with her daughter because no one was there to help her out or anything like that. And it was horrible that way. All right, and for me, I think that we've all seen them, like the homeless people, like they stand out on the street corners, like they yell out to like your cars, stuff like that. And we all get so used to seeing them that they almost become invisible to us when we go downtown and stuff like that. And I think back to when I was talking to her, and I think about the ones that we don't see every day. The ones that aren't standing on the corners yelling at us, begging for money. The ones who are standing right next to us in the McDonald's parking lot and are in line, and they're using their last dollar on a meal that they probably won't have for a while later until they get more money for it. Those are the people that I think about when I think of like homelessness, not the ones that are always on the corners. The ones that like are really like troubled and everything, they have like this pride and they don't want to do that, and they deserve like help and stuff. And many homeless people are in fact employed. It's just that they're so paid so low that they can't have enough money to support themselves. And also like many kids like who are born into poverty never do get out of poverty. And also when you think about it, you'll be like, well, if this never happened to my family, why like do I really care? Well, a place that has less like homeless people normally does have a less crime rate. Kids who get kicked out of like orphanages, kids who like have run away like from abusive parents, stuff like that, they join like gangs and go into like different kind of crimes because feeling like getting caught in like in a gang and doing a few like drug deals here and there is worth feeling like you have like a home. So they feel like if they feel like they have that home and like a place that they want to belong, then those risks aren't that bad. And I think that the action needs to be taken now before any more kids or anyone else like goes down like the wrong path. Step one, I believe, is to get people like prevent them from getting into the streets anyways. And this can be used like from like our government like officials, like our elected officials that we have, like help bring up minimum wage, like do things like that. And having a stable like economy in your place like brings the whole economy up as a whole. So if there's a ton of people who are like poverty stricken level in this like a particular community, a lot of times like the whole community suffers because the ones who spend are the one like the middle class, and if you have a poverty stricken like middle class, then a lot of the time the whole economy as a whole will not thrive. So that does help, like it's like a cause and effect, like one like situation. It's kind of like one man's paycheck is another man's spending, like that. And then step two, I believe that inform the public. We can't expect like everybody, like the public to know about these issues just automatically. We have to bring the issues to them. This could be by, in high schools they require community service. So have like, they have to do it as like to graduate. So you have them help out with different events and stuff like that. This will also get like people to help out, also by making them want like get attached to it and maybe want to actually do it like as they get like older and as they progress and they realize that they have like a form like of a connection to it, so it can start off good habits right in like at a young age. And then step three is to focus on the personal individuals at a time. When I went to a night ministry, like they had a bus and they kind of want people real fast, like to get through everybody, which is understandable. But I think that there should be some time to take, like if you're talking to a group of 100 people and telling each of them like not anything like specific about them, they won't take it into consideration and feel like rushed, confused like of what they were doing, unless if you talk to a smaller group at a time and get more of a result from it. So I think that the people who are like counselors who are getting paid to do this should really sit down with them and have like personal like conferences with people to get them to really understand and know what they need to do to get themselves back up on their feet. And I think that it's like the quote being like Rome wasn't built in a day. I know that asking the like that we can fix like the like whole world's like hunger is like finding the cure to cancer, but it's really honestly not that bad, because if you break it up by like city to city, neighborhood to neighborhood, and everybody does their little part, it can make a huge difference like all over the country. So I believe that instead of thinking of it as like feeding the needy or doing like charity work, just think of it as like an even exchange. We give to them, they can give back to us eventually. So I think that we have the power, we do have the power to make these people's lives completely different, and we should be taking every advantage that we have and to help them get back on their feet. And as like morals for like our own selves living in a community, like you wouldn't want, like if something bad happened to you, like houses burn down every day, floods happen, and if nobody was there to care, like think about how, like put yourself in that, like their shoes for like one day, and you can realize like how bad it really is. And if we have the power to make that change, I think we should definitely go forth and do that.